Black woman delivery driver outshines 20 engineers with genius solution. Fix it now. The room was stunned. Imagine being the only person in a room full of experts. They've tried everything, yet they're stuck. They've spent days, even weeks, trying to solve a problem that seems impossible. And then you, someone who doesn't even belong in that room, offer a solution that changes everything. What happens next is nothing short of shocking. This is the story of a woman whose intelligence and perseverance not only challenged the prejudices of those around her, but also shattered the illusion that talent is determined by who you are or where you come from. Her story is one of racial bias, intellect, and defying expectations. Stay with us. You won't believe what happened when this delivery driver did the impossible. It was a rainy Tuesday when Tiffany arrived at the high-rise corporate building, carrying her large, worn-out delivery bag. She wasn't here for lunch orders or packages today. No, she was here to deliver something much more valuable, her mind. Tiffany, a black woman, had been working as a delivery driver for a tech company, bringing supplies and documents back and forth. But she was more than that. She was a self-taught engineer, a woman who had spent her nights studying complex systems, code, and machinery. Her passion for tech wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. Tiffany had earned her spot as an outsider in a predominantly white, male-dominated field, working odd jobs while dreaming of a chance to prove herself. That opportunity arrived when one of the engineers noticed her tinkering with some equipment during one of her deliveries. He was impressed by her knowledge. It was then that he made a call. "We need your help," he said. Little did Tiffany know that this was going to be a moment that would test not just her skills, but the deep-seated biases of an entire company. Tiffany stood before the team of 20 engineers, each one more seasoned and experienced than she. They had been working on a high-profile project for months. The company's future depended on this one piece of technology, a system that could revolutionize the industry. But it had a flaw, a minor but critical flaw that none of the engineers could fix. They had tried everything. The room was filled with frustration, the kind that comes when you've invested so much time and energy into something, only to be met with dead ends. Tiffany watched them, her eyes scanning the room. She wasn't intimidated. She had spent years studying engineering principles, the intricacies of how systems worked. But this wasn't about qualifications. It was about recognition. The moment she opened her mouth, the room went silent. They all turned toward her, and for a second, Tiffany wondered if they even believed she could help. The eyes that stared back at her weren't filled with curiosity. They were filled with skepticism. It wasn't just her gender or race that worked against her. It was the simple fact that she wasn't part of the elite group of engineers. She was the outsider, the delivery driver. Yet, despite the doubts, Tiffany felt a surge of confidence. She was here for a reason, and she wasn't about to back down. She stepped up to the whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and began sketching out a diagram that left the engineers looking at each other in disbelief. She wasn't following any textbook. No, she was thinking outside the box. As she spoke about her solution, innovative, practical, and utterly different from anything they had considered, the engineers slowly began to realize this wasn't just a fluke. She knew what she was talking about, but skepticism still lingered. Could a woman who was only a delivery driver really understand the complexities of the project? It wasn't just a technical challenge Tiffany had to face. It was the racial and gender bias that came with her very presence in that room. Every word she spoke, every idea she presented was met with a sense of doubt and dismissal. Tiffany didn't have the fancy degrees or titles. She had something else, determination. The clock was ticking and tensions in the room were high. The engineers had spent countless hours on this problem, and they were running out of time. Tiffany's solution wasn't just clever, it was bold. She suggested they rework the system's foundational architecture entirely, something no one else had dared to propose. The engineers were on the verge of rejecting her. But there was one problem. They had nothing else to lose. "Let's try it," one of them said, his tone more out of desperation than faith. What followed was a tense silence as Tiffany worked with them, guiding them through the steps of her plan. The room buzzed with the sound of keyboards clacking and the sound of frantic discussions. At times, Tiffany felt the weight of their skepticism bearing down on her. Would they really let a black woman, a delivery driver, fix what they couldn't? She refused to let it stop her. She had earned this moment. And when the system finally came online, working flawlessly, far better than anyone had imagined, the room fell silent. The engineers stared at the screens in disbelief, and Tiffany couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph rising inside her. It was then that one of the senior engineers, the one who had dismissed her the most, looked at her with wide eyes and said, "You fixed it. You actually fixed it." Tiffany had done the impossible. She had not only solved the problem, but had done so in a way that challenged the very foundation of the biases that had been held against her. She had shattered expectations, proving that intellect was not confined to the boundaries of race or gender. Tiffany's success that day didn't just change the course of the project, it changed her life. Word spread quickly, and soon she was offered a full-time position at the company, not just as a delivery driver, but as a lead engineer. The very people who had doubted her now looked up to her as an equal. But while Tiffany felt pride in her accomplishments, she couldn't ignore the reality that her victory was still exceptional. She had been given this chance only because of the curiosity of one engineer who saw her potential, even when others refused to. Her story became a beacon of hope for those who had been overlooked, for those who were denied a seat at the table simply because of their race or background. Tiffany's rise to the top wasn't just about proving herself to others. It was about proving to herself that no barrier, no matter how deeply ingrained, could stop her from achieving her dreams. Her story serves as a potent reminder. Talent, innovation, and intelligence are colorblind, and sometimes the person who can solve your biggest problem might be the one you least expect. As we reflect on Tiffany's journey, we must ask ourselves, how many other brilliant minds are we overlooking simply because they don't fit the mold? What are we missing when we allow our biases to cloud our judgment? The next time you're faced with a problem, ask yourself, are you seeing the whole picture? Or are you letting your preconceptions limit the possibilities?